in every category. These guys are on the back end, the wrong side. It's, to me, not that complex. The problem is they have this surround sound, doom loop, anger machine. And that's our great challenge, I think, for Democrats.
During a recent interview with progressive commentator Brian Tyler Cohen, Gavin Newsom, the Democratic governor of California, took about 70 seconds to make a pretty compelling case for the general superiority of Democratic governance over the Republican Party alternative. And then he concluded with a pretty powerful call to action that the rest of us should heed. You and me, members of the media, and even the president. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. All right, folks, I've got about 3 clips to play. 2 of them involve Gavin Newsom. But before I jump into those things, the reason I'm doing this particular video, and I've said this before, I am a cynic. I am open about that, right? A lot of people, I think, are either natural optimists or they feign optimism. I don't feign optimism. I am a cynic by nature. I am the glass is half empty kind of guy. And we live in a media and political environment in which we are assailed nonstop with bad news. And it's easy to get discouraged. And I say that from personal experience. We hear about foreign crises, domestic crises, inflation, issues with the economy, people going through legitimate, sincere troubles. Climate change is real. Our window to deal with that meaningfully for this generation and future generations is shrinking rapidly. And then in the face of all that, we have one of 2 major parties, which is just swan diving into fascism. Donald Trump is openly calling to be a dictator. The Republican Party shows absolutely no interest whatsoever in checking him and becoming some sort of principled opposition party. They're a bad faith, disloyal, authoritarian cult of personality, and they wield tremendous power when you consider the vast institutional and civic advantages they have, plus the fact that they have at their beck and call a turnkey media apparatus, both in the mainstream and alternate media. They are well-funded, they are charismatic, they are sleek, and they are effective. Very formidable. So it's easy to forget that more often than not, we have the facts on our side. We have more popular policies. We have generally more effective policies. But also facts don't speak for themselves. And that's one of the recurring themes of this channel. It's cool to have the facts. It's good to have the facts, but you have to persuasively convey the facts to everyone you possibly can. And that brings us to Gavin Newsom. Now, I don't live in California. I don't know what it's like to deal with Gavin Newsom. All I know is that when it comes to his messaging, he is an incredibly effective firebrand fire breather in terms of making the case that if you have to choose between the 2 parties, you're better off, more likely than not, in the hands of a Democrat. And so I want to play this clip from Brian Tyler Cohen, and then we will unpack it together.
Yeah, I mean, 7 of the top 10 most dependent states, dare I say taker states, are red states. I mean, you look at infant mortality, you look at maternal mortality, you look at life expectancy, you look at the gun death rate, the murder rate. 7 of the top 10 murder rates in the United States are in red states. In every category, these guys are on the back end, the wrong side. You want to compare blue versus red? 71% of the nation's economic output, 71% of the GDP in the United States of America come from Biden counties, come from blue counties in the United States. I mean, in every category, the red versus blue, it's, to me, not that complex. The problem is they have this surround sound, doom loop, anger machine. And that's our great challenge, I think, for Democrats, is that we have got to counter that. And for me, my iteration with this, I don't know, good or bad, people may be different or indifferent about what I did. I just think it's important to meet people where they are and to at least try to get in there and to try to go toe to toe with these guys, because otherwise we continue to live in these filter bubbles.
He's 100% correct. And he's explaining his rationale for debating, Ron DeSantis, the Republican governor of Florida, even though it was basically a 2v1 with Sean Hannity, betraying his commitment to be an impartial moderator, and also why he's on Truth Social and why he's running millions of dollars worth of advertisements in Texas and Florida. He's trying to make the case that we need to be aggressors in rhetoric. We need to take the messaging fight to the Republicans rather than allow the Republicans and the bad faith right to dictate the messaging more. And he's absolutely correct. Now, I just want to point some things out. Everything Gavin Newsom said was 100% correct. You look at infant mortality rates by state, the vast majority of the people with the highest infant mortality rates are Republican. Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, Alaska, South Carolina, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Ohio, West Virginia, all red states. Okay. Maternal and infant mortality death rates are higher in states that ban or restrict abortion, report says, aka red states. Life expectancy in Republican states, how do they compare to Democratic ones? Residents in Democratic voting states experience an average life expectancy of more than 2 years longer than their Republican counterparts, according to a Newsweek analysis of World Population Review data. You look at, again, this is corroborated elsewhere, the mortality gap between Republican and Democratic counties is widening, study says. Here's why, and it goes into it. New study found that death rates are improving faster in Democratic counties than Republican ones. Again, another source which confirms the widening gap in death rates between Democratic and Republican counties. He mentioned gun deaths. Red states have higher gun death rates than blue states. This is confirmed by Forbes. He refers to, rates of gun violence. Well, cities in blue states are experiencing larger declines, greater declines in gun violence in 2023. And by the way, people talk about crime. We've seen a precipitous drop in crime throughout 2023. The year's nearly over. In terms of murder, it's 100% true. Axios, The Third Way, we have multiple studies confirming that that red states generally have higher murder rates, especially when you consider per capita, right, which is the most accurate metric to use. The economy. People talk about, fiscal responsibility, setting aside the fact that the Republican Party is by its own definition fiscally irresponsible. Donald Trump added $8 trillion to the national debt, the single greatest contribution of a one-term president. If you break it down just across the country, Biden voting counties, as Governor Newsom suggested, equal 70% of America's economic activity. Okay. So in terms of people talk about how America is the greatest and most prosperous nation in the history of civilization. That's true. And the overwhelming credit for that belongs to blue cities, blue states, and blue counties. So before I play the next two clips, these are important facts to have because very often the perception is the exact opposite. But as we talk about, perception is ultimately what decides elections. It doesn't matter if you have the facts on your side if you don't persuasively convey them, if you don't take the time to try whatever combination of words to make that case. Some people, use gentle rhetoric. I tend to be a bit more sarcastic and more aggressive because I believe in a diversity of tactics. I believe you have to have aggressive rhetoricians in the toolkit, not just gentle, calm, kind people, although that's very often effective as well. And in another clip during that interview with Brian Tyler Cohen, Newsom points out, like on a macroeconomic scale, we're talking about red states versus blue states in the previous clip. What about like national trends? Well, again, he makes a case that I've tried to make in multiple videos.
Another argument in favor of Bidenomics, 14.1 now million new jobs, almost 14.2 million jobs. It's 10 times more than the last three Republican presidents combined. You look at, by the way, just on the jobs score, I think it's so important for Democrats out there to understand this. Since the end of the Cold War, since Reagan left office, there have been 50 million American jobs created. 48 million of them, I'll repeat that, 48 out of 50 million American jobs have been created under Democratic administrations, not Republican administrations. The last three Republican presidents have one thing in common: recessions. The last three. I can't believe we've been debating the issue of jobs and the economy in comparing to contrast the Republican Party. So look, again, all of this is, it expresses itself in terms of the work we have to do to lift up the work that Biden and Harris and the Democratic Party have broadly done, and then obviously get things ready for the contrast. And the compare and contrast is where we're going to excel. And that's why I have great confidence going into 2024.
Again, I'm a cynic by nature. I don't know if I share his complete confidence, but I do know we have the facts on our side. And if we have skilled debaters, people, skilled rhetoricians, skilled persuaders, people like Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, people like Gavin Newsom, my AOC, plenty of people from the liberal/progressive wing of politics. And we're just talking about people in professional politics. Mehdi Hasan, my favorite, mainstream progressive commentator. He is very good at this. But also, it's not just Gavin Newsom. There are other Democratic governors who can make this case. Andy Beshear of Kentucky is somebody who I think is an exceptional, empathetic, compassionate, persuasive speaker. But you also have Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, who doesn't command the national profile of somebody like Gavin Newsom, California being the biggest and most economically prosperous of our 50 states, the fourth or fifth biggest economy on the planet. But Tim Walz has been an enormously effective governor. And when he was interviewed by CNN, he, in a roundabout way, I would argue, with a different style of rhetoric, from, I suppose, a different vector, he kind of reinforced everything that Gavin Newsom just said in terms of the contrast between Republican governance and Democratic governance.
And you said, basically, there's no such thing as a generic Republican. These guys are weird. Once they start running, their weirdness shows up. What did you mean? What, weird
I'll
how?
stand by that. Well, look, just the strange things they become obsessed with, demonizing our children, becoming obsessed with people's personal lives in their bedrooms, restricting freedoms. I'm surrounded by states who are spending their time figuring out how to ban Charlotte's Web in their schools while we're banishing hunger from ours with free breakfast and lunch. That's what the public's looking for. That's what they're trying to get to. And they will weirdly obsess with everything to be mean and cruel and small in their ideas. And I didn't hear anything last night that did anything different to that. So I'll stand by that. I just think Americans know this is just weird stuff to be focused on. And many of the times it's just projection. We hear these stories every time. They want to project morality to us. And I say, as your elected leaders, you don't need to hear a sermon from us, but you expect us to try and live one. And I think whether it's making sure the middle class has what they need, protecting reproductive rights, truly addressing climate change, governors are doing that across the country. They're popular with that. And I think we understand we'll be able to do that because of Joe Biden's policies, whether it's the Infrastructure Act, CHIPS Act, bringing manufacturing back to America. Those are things people want to hear about, not demonizing some child because of who they are. At the end of the day, Americans are better than that.
I think that's a very inspirational message. But again, I'm a cynic by nature. I really want to believe that. I think there's substance to it. But you and I and everybody else, we have to be out there screaming loudly in various combinations of words, in various tones, at various times, basically attacking this from every possible vector. We have to be making this case. It is true that Republicans' transphobic attacks, I mean, it's hurting a marginalized group, but it's not like it's winning them tons of elections. It's just hurting people. So the cruelty is the point. We've talked about the GOP's assault on reproductive rights. We've talked about that case out of Texas. We talked about how they deny that they're going after birth control when the evidence is mounting that they intend to. Their ideas suck. It's just a fact. Poll after poll after poll after poll after poll reflects it. And yet, we have legitimate issues winning over the electorate in this country. Like, Democrats struggle far more than we should, and the progressive left in general struggles far more than we should, even though, again, our ideas are generally more popular and much more effective, because it's not enough to have the facts. We have to press our advantage as much as humanly possible. That's just my take on it. I want to give you some good news. I want to remind you of some of the facts, some of the things that are on our side, and hopefully you and I can inspire each other, as Governor Walz and Governor Newsom and others can inspire us to make sure we're conveying these facts every damn chance we get, because facts are great. Feelings do matter more. Perception is reality. And we really have to change perception as we head into the 2024 election. So let me know what you think in the comments.